Thank you for having me. Forgive me as we progress. I am sleep deprived, so I am already emotional. And I've actually had a couple losses this year, but the most painful of which on January 12th, I had to experience putting down my 14-year-old dog, Isabel, my sweet Is, and nothing can prepare you for that. I had her for all of those 14 years, basically. I rescued her from Wake County Animal Shelter when she was just about, we think, 3 months old. And I actually was going through kind of a tough point in my life. I had just moved back in with my parents in my early 20s. It was the middle of the Great Recession. I didn't know what I wanted to do for work. I was going through a bad breakup, and my parents were out of town. I think they were in like some tropical islands, some halfway across the world, scuba diving. And I was like, you know what? My mom has always talked about getting another cat. So I'm going to go to the animal shelter and I'm going to see maybe if there's a kitty I can bring home. And I took my best friend, Katie, and my darling friend. We looked at the kitties. They were all very sweet, but there was just no cat that like really landed with me. And so before we left, my friend Katie was like, we can't leave here without going to look at the dogs.
Yeah.
Because I am a dog person, but I knew it would kind of tear me apart, and it did. And we kind of walked all the way around. And if you've ever been to an animal shelter, it's so hard because all of the dogs are, for the most part, are up in the front of their cages. They're jumping, barking, screaming, get me out of here, pay attention to me. And I made it most of the way around. I was just walking around looking at the dogs, and I get to like the third to last cage, and I see her. She's in the back of the cage, huddled in a corner by herself, shaking, malnourished. And the name on the cage said Izzy. And I was like, I have to hold this poor puppy. I have to get in there. So I got in there, and just like immediately she was just so loving and so terrified. And so I adopted her that day. I couldn't take her home that day because she needed to be spayed. And so that was actually the first hard challenge with her, was needing to take her home with me and then not being able to. I actually picked her up a few days later with my mom after my parents got back in town.
Were they mad that you rescued a dog while they were gone?
So I picked them up from the airport, and I said to them, so I have some good news and some bad news you like to have first, because an extended family member actually just been diagnosed with cancer. And so that was the bad news. But when I said that to my mom, and she said, well, we want to hear the good news first. And I told them, well, I adopted a puppy. And my mom goes, that's the good news. So they weren't happy at first, but they loved her so much. I brought her home, and I was living with my parents. And so that was her home. And through those 14 years, my parents were her family, and that was her other home. So yeah, 14 years, and it still feels surreal to me. This is going to be really hard for me because I tried to prepare myself for it, and I couldn't possibly have done that. And now I'm feeling guilt and some anger at myself for wasting time trying to prepare myself when I should have just been more present with her. I don't know what I thought I was doing, but...
What is the guilt and the anger?
I found myself, especially kind of over the last year of her life, trying to distance myself a little bit, and kind of pulling back. And I hate that I did that. because I loved her so much. And part of me feels like she felt that. She felt that I was pulling back. And I really hope that she didn't feel that at the end, that she felt loved.
If she was here, what would you want to say to her?
I think the hardest thing about losing a dog is that they are unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have fights with your dog. I mean, you can get annoyed sometimes, you get mad at them, but there is no like silent period where if you get in a fight with your dog, you don't talk to each other, you know? They don't hold grudges. She was my constant. I mean, I moved her across the country multiple times. She went through everything with me. She saved my life multiple times. And I think I knew in my gut that I was just going to be in a lot of pain when she was gone. And so I tried to prepare myself for that. And I wish I wouldn't have done that. And if I could take it back, I would just have loved her more. I would have given her more love. I would have been more gentle with her and more patient with her.
In that situation, a very common experience is like, we can only do the best that we can do. I have very, very similar thoughts to the time with my wife, especially once the cancer progressed so wildly. And it's just this sense of like, well, I could have done more. I could have done more. I could have been more patient. I could have talked to her more.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what was it that was like holding me back from that? Did I do enough? And I don't know that even if I changed things, I could have. I don't know even if I changed things, if I would still be able to sit here and say, yeah, I did enough.
Yeah.
I feel good in it. Because when you have your heart so wholly ripped out, you're going to criticize every single moment that you felt like you didn't give 120%.
Yeah. That's so true. There's no going back. And I think the challenge I'm facing now is letting myself heal. I have a little girl at home, a toddler, and I want her to know that, you know, not everything is butterflies and rainbows, but she's young and she doesn't understand loss and pain yet, and I'm not ready for her to experience that. And so I'm trying to keep this from her as much as possible as far as like my pain and my grief. And so I've not really been letting myself move through it as much as I think I really need to. I internalize pain and then it gets expressed in like physical ailments. So I'm having a hard time balancing, you know, kind of like beating myself up over how I managed the last year and the pain I'm feeling now with, you know, what is the appropriate amount of pain to show at home to a child who I just want to be happy.
How does she, like, has she expressed any, you know, like, I miss Izzy or?
Oh yeah. It's fading a little bit now already. We're, you know, like 3 months out, but especially the first month or two, she would even like wake up after, you know, sleeping all night, wake up in the morning. I miss my dog. I miss my dog. And those moments are especially heartbreaking for me.
Can't even imagine.
One of my mom's close friends sent me a message just after we said goodbye that was really fantastic. And I think it is true for dogs and humans. She just said, Isabel gave your daughter the blessing of loving a dog. Like now she loves dogs because of her. It's just, that was so important to me. And that's what I want her to feel when she remembers Isabel. It's just like a good dog and a love and a relationship that I hope she can remember, even though she's so little.
When she says that she misses Izzy, what is your response to it? Do you share kind of the pain that you have?
Yeah, I do to an extent. I'd say I miss her too.
Mm,
I miss her a lot. And when I am experiencing those moments, which are still happening frequently, I have down days,
yeah.
down moments. I try to be open with her about it, but I still have days where I feel really sad, and I don't want her to feel that pain too, which I'm sure, CJ, being a parent, it's a really hard balance
Yeah.
to try and figure out, to navigate.
Yeah, it's hard to know. It's a balance of learning and acknowledging their pain versus us putting our pain on them.
Yeah.
So like we just had our first dog die last year,
Oh,
and he
sorry.
ended up dying in the home. I've repeated it ad nauseum, but basically he ended up getting liver cancer and he died in the home. And it was like, it's like, what do you do in that moment? Especially because the dog, like it was my wife's dog, really. He especially was like so close with my wife. So to feel to like, it's like in that moment of like, one, I was like, well, I just fucked up as a parent because we didn't bring him in or have somebody euthanize him and let him go peacefully. Like he had to fucking die in his sleep in my son's room. So it was like having to put that aside and just give them space to be like, what are you feeling? What is coming up for you? What is going on? And to be like, it's okay. Like I remember when I got the phone call that they told us he had liver cancer because it came out of nowhere. I brought him into the vet. 2 hours later, they're like, unfortunately. And I just remember I was like, oh, okay. Kind of like super nonchalant of like, yeah, it's kind of sad. I walked into my daughter's room 30 seconds later to tell her. And I like, as soon as I opened my mouth, I just fucking lost it.
Yeah.
Lost it. And like, just kind of like, I know that it was scary for her to see me lose that, even though they've seen me cry, or I assume they have so much over
Yeah.
their lifetime. It also became a moment that her and I got to share. And then the kids, we all got to share of just like, okay, this is horrible and we can cry together.
Yeah.
When you say you have these down days and it's sadness, but what does that like sadness feel? What's coming up for you? Like I'm curious how that loss is manifesting for you.
Most of the time when I'm in yoga at the end of class, it's like such a release for me that I just like break down crying. And that's probably because I feel safe there, and that's somewhere out of the home that I am able to release whatever it is that I'm going through. So that's a shout out to my Alchemy Hot Yoga Studio and like how life-saving that is for me. But it's kind of hard for me to put into words. I think I feel that loss like in my bones of that constant unconditional love, the no judgment. It doesn't matter what I say or what kind of day I'm having, she's there. I really loved putting my face in her neck, especially if I was like stressed out, and Ashley, I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When I was like stressed out or upset about something or just like needed an extra bit of love, I just would stick my face in her neck. And there are so many days recently where I'm just like, shit, I wish I could do that so badly right now.
Yeah.
I wish I could go back to all the times that I had the ability to do that and just be like, savor this. So that's a lot of it. And then unfortunately, what I can't stop doing is replaying that last day with her.
The worst.
It really is. My mom, she tried to warn me. She was like, the hardest part about having a dog is when you have to say goodbye. And, you don't know until you go through it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm grateful I was able to do it with her so peacefully, and to be holding her through it.
Mm-hmm.
But the vet, I'll never forget the vet saying, I was holding her face in my hands, and the vet saying, she's crossed over. And
Mm-hmm.
it just was like, that's it. Can't we
Yeah.
go back a few minutes while she was still here?
Yeah.
There's no going back from that. It's like, it's just gut wrenching. I can't stop reliving that. I know it will just take time, but it's so hard right now.
It's okay. It is hard and it haunts us,
Yeah.
those moments. But thank you for being here and showing up and sharing with us, even in the pain of that loss. And what I hear is like that loss is that unconditional support. It was the constant support that never asked for anything in return.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really hard to lose.
Yeah.
What have you found for support in this?
Well, my mom loved her like I did. And so she's been experiencing it in similar ways. And so thankfully, she only lives 10 minutes down the road. She's here with my daughter a lot. So I can lean on her. But I think that is one of the kind of challenging things with just like dealing with grief and pain in today's world generally is we're often like so physically removed from the people that we love or are closest with, like our best friends. And I don't think that helps. Like, definitely think we're like pack animals and we need our people. So a couple weeks ago, actually, my grandma passed away right before her birthday, the end of March. And I just booked a flight to San Diego, like a day after finding that out, to go see two of my best friends because I'm like, I need my girls now. I think the only way I'm going to get over this like hump of pain is just to be with my girls for a few days and let loose and let some of it go and live with them through stuff that they're also experiencing and the challenges that they have in their lives too.
Yeah, community.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it really is everything. And I spend all day, it feels like every day, on video calls, and at least I'm connected in some way, but my love language is touch. So I really just want to be hugged.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I know you talked about the release you get at the end of yoga because that feels like a safe space. Have you found it unsafe? Not in your home. That makes sense. Like you're trying to keep that from your daughter, but have you found space, energetic space, just spaces where you feel like you're allowed to grieve a dog in society? Like, have you found places where you're like, it's okay to feel what I'm feeling? Or do you feel like you still have to hide it even from like society as a placeholder for just the world existing?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it feeds into some of this virtual disconnect that we live in. I I think human connection is really important for our emotional and mental well-being. And I mean that even more so like with the physical connection possible. I think like I said, I think we're pack animals and I think we need to be together. And because there seems to be a lot less of that these days, oftentimes it feels to me like we have become a little bit more numb or unaccepting of just like emotion. People think of it as a weakness or just aren't comfortable connecting on like an emotional level. And I don't know if that's because of social media and just like the speed of the tech world and how we connect these days. But yeah, it feels hard to be openly raw. I am a very naturally emotional, expressive person. So it probably, for folks who know me really well, it's probably weird hearing that come from me. But yeah, I think it's hard to, I don't know that we're as accepting as we need to be as humans to each other, because we really are all going through it in one way or another.
Yeah.
And it really helps to talk about it and to just be in presence with other people who are experiencing something you're experiencing, and it helps to encourage that.
I actually feel like COVID helped encourage people connect a little bit better, in the sense that it like opened up like our home lives to work, where like we did keep it so separate before. And now I feel more comfortable at least talking about it. Because I think before it was like, is it okay to talk about home life? Like you did with some coworkers that you were friendly with, but you didn't do it like so openly. And now, like when the delivery person or like the mother-in-law stops by and you're like, I'm so sorry, this person's walking in the back of
my mother-in-law is here.
Like, keep talking to me. Just kidding. She probably listens to this. I'm just kidding. But it's like, I do think there was like parts, or like I was thinking about this like not that long ago, in that there is things that COVID helped to become a little bit more connected and talk a little bit more openly and not be so like, work and professional versus like home and personal. But I do agree with you, Liz, in the sense that like we're a little bit more like we're not like in the office. Obviously you and I both work remote and, we have our pockets of going on site with people, but like so much of it is through a camera. And that's like just, it's different than, having that face-to-face interaction for, we don't need to go into that. But I think it was like a good thing. Like I enjoy that work is a little bit more open and people are just like, I got to take my kid to the doctor. So I'll be back later. Yeah.
No, I definitely agree.
Like I think that helps me, just a better employee, honestly, that I don't have to like worry about not being able to take the dogs to the vet or whatever in the middle of the day. And say that like it took me a while to even like now sometimes I'm like, oh, can I say that? But other people, and I'm like, oh, it's totally fine. And maybe some environments, like some work environments aren't open to that, but I think that that's like something that's so important to me like in any job now. Like it's if that's not okay, I don't think I wouldn't do well there.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I think like grief, loss of someone puts it on another level. Like the pain I'm feeling, having had to put Isabel down, was like, it's probably the worst thing I've ever experienced. There's no like grieving period for that with work. I haven't taken time off, which might be part of my problem. And I'm kind of hitting myself in the head here, being like, maybe you should. But, like the rules around like what's acceptable for like loss and emotional stability and taking time off to take care of yourself, that I think is a challenge.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's like understood to a certain point, and then sometimes there's assumptions on like, well, you should be over it. Like, and that's like globally. I mean, literally Empathy came out with like their cost of dying report, and I think it was like the average bereavement leave is like 5.6 days. Okay. 5 days. 5 freaking days. And I will say, I think that, not that I'm advocating that that's wrong, but because I'm sure there are companies that are like, you get 5 days and like, that's it. But I do know that there are companies that the policy states 5 days, but it also says like, basically that they'll work
Yeah.
with you, because there's multiple ways in which you can get short-term disability. You could take PTO plus those 5 days, plus come back part-time.
That's great. Yeah, I think, but it's, it's not one size fits all. Everybody has experienced something different and everyone deals with it differently. Like someone else may go back to work because that's how they deal with it, is like they need to stay busy. They want to deal with it in their own time, and maybe they will only need 5 days. And so I think we need to be more open to allowing people whatever.
100%.
Obviously there's going to be parameters, but just accepting that we all deal with this in different ways.
It's more than the initial loss too. Like I don't feel that I was given enough time off, especially like my wife died around the holidays and I just needed to get my kids through the holidays and figure out life and how I was going to function and work. And even going back, even if I had that time, it's like when you're back, like that grief just can, like you were mentioning earlier, Liz, like that grief continues on. So like I'm in a meeting and I'm holding back tears with everything in me, which means I'm not fully present. And sometimes I literally have to mute the camera, turn it off, and just like break down at my desk, wipe my tears as fast as I could and get back on. And there's no built-in empathy for that. And I think it's not even the company's fault. It's the fact as humans, we don't understand how to witness somebody else's pain.
Yeah.
And that's all we want. We just want somebody to witness it, to be like, yeah, that fucking sucks.
Yeah.
I don't need to be fixed. I don't need tools. I don't need you to tell me everything's going to be okay. Sometimes I just need to be like, listen, this is something that's happening. I feel vulnerable. I'm willing to share it with you. Can you just look at it and say, yep, I see it? And that's hard to do in person.
That's so true.
Yeah. And you can do it over video, but like if you don't have that skill in person, you're fucked on video, because it takes so much intentionality to be able to be present with somebody. It's so hard to be present in video.
I just listened to a podcast with like a child psychiatrist actually. And I think she talks about how, speaking with children, it's important to just like acknowledge that they're real.
Yeah.
Or what they're experiencing is real. Because especially with kids, they don't know if something happening is like reality or if it's like a made up world. They don't understand the differentiation between like what's going on in a movie and like what they're experiencing as a human, because oftentimes they're going through things for the first time. But I think that applies for like all of us, is like, we just need an acknowledgement that like shit's real, and like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you're feeling this, it's real, it's okay. And like, I'm here. It can be super powerful to hear. Like, just hearing you say that, I feel like emotional, but I feel good just hearing you say like, yeah, it's real and it sucks. That's it.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad. And that's what we need.
Yeah, it is.
I had that first experience where that idea came. I was in somatic therapy, which is body work. Basically, it's not talk therapy. You're just re-experiencing all the pain and letting that move through your body, because we store it there. It's very similar to yoga.
Yeah.
And the woman who led this with me, we had our one-on-one sessions and we finished it. And I just remember like we were closing out our time. We did it for a year. And I was so overwhelmed with gratitude. And I'm like, you went beyond holding space. And I was like, you fucking witnessed my pain.
Yeah.
And I finally felt like I was able to fully let it out, because up until that point, other than one experience that I had before that, my grief was my own. So like very similar to you, it was like, there was very little space where I felt like I could just let it out.
Yeah.
Like it felt like, this is mine. Nobody knows how to handle it. They're going to judge it. But in that space, she's just like, let's let it out. Let's have it. So I think we need to do that.
Moving through it physically, so it's been really helpful for me. But that's wonderful that you had that. I'm sure you felt releases in multiple ways from that experience, like joints that were hurting probably felt relief. And yeah, that's what I think slowly. I had that moment actually earlier this week. I was having one of those down days and I went to yoga, and that teacher just particularly spoke to me, as happens. Like, it's like the universe knows when somebody needs to talk directly to you, and that message gets through. And yeah, it just helped me realize like healing takes time and you can't rush it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
What other things have you been doing for your journey? I know it's still so fucking early, but what other things have you reached for, tried, weren't successful in?
The one thing that I intended to do actually over Easter weekend was, my family has a place at the beach, and that was Isabel's like favorite place in the whole world. She loved to swim, and we have a water that's on a canal with a dock on the water, and she would jump off the canal and fetch balls, and I just have so many fond memories there. And I had her cremated, so I plan to scatter her ashes at some point down there, or at least some of them. I think I'm going to hold on to some, but I didn't feel ready yet when I was down there. I'm not really ready to let go of her yet. But that's part of the plan, and I'm sure that will feel like I've reached a next step in healing when I'm ready to do that. And then I want my daughter to continue to love dogs, and I miss having a dog in my house. So I think maybe eventually when I'm ready, we find the right one. I'm going to bring one home, probably another rescue.
Do you have anything that you do to try to keep Izzy's memory alive?
Oh, besides all of the pictures all over my house? No, when I can. I like to walk a lot. Walking is my thing. And that was what she did with me for most of her life until the arthritis got really bad. So I actually lived down the street from a dog park that I took her to almost every day when she was a puppy. So I've started kind of making a routine of just like going up there and walking around the dog park and kind of like talking to her and being present with her. I've gone in there by myself and just like sat at a table and like visited with the dogs and relived it kind of. I mean, everything reminds me of her. I still hear her in my house. So she's still with me all the time right now.
Without a doubt. Yeah. For somebody who's going through what you're going through, what would you offer to them? What advice?
Oh, gosh. Well, if they're still with you, you still have some time left with them, be present and just give them all the love and appreciation. You know, I've seen some people do like bucket list type stuff. Do it. Be present with them. If you've already lost them, I'm here. Get in touch with me. But yeah, hold on to the ones that you love. And don't be afraid to surround yourself with people who will just be there for you. Yeah, don't rush your healing. It takes time.
If this might be an odd question, but if somehow you could get a message to all of society about grief and pet grief in specific, what would that message be?
I think just generally, if we could be kinder to each other. Like I said, we're all going through it in some way. There's something happening to every single one of us in any given moment. And if we could just be a little bit more patient and kind with each other, and just know that you could never truly understand what someone else is experiencing, I do think this world would be a little bit better of a place, holding space for each other like this. Just knowing that there's somebody that you can talk to, even if it's a stranger. I've always lived like that, like smiling at people can really change their day. Sometimes that's all someone needs to turn their day around. So that's it for me. Just be kind to people.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's one last thing I want to ask you. You don't have to answer. Okay. But if you are willing, would you share us one of your favorite memories with Isabel?
Oh my gosh, one of my favorite. There are so many,
but feel free to share
okay,
two.
I'm gonna share two. They're short. I'll keep them short. The first one, I adopted her from the animal shelter. I brought her home. And that first week, my parents lived by a nature park, and I was taking her for a walk through this nature park. I had her off leash because I was training her to just be an off leash dog, which she was. And I didn't know it at the time that she was obsessed with water. Anyway, we were just walking through this park. There's a little bridge, goes over this lake that's in the middle of the nature park. She jumped off the bridge into the water. And I think it was November, so the water was very cold. The air temperature was probably like low 40s. And she's this like little 3-month-old malnourished dog. I hadn't had the chance to put meat on her yet. So I took my coat off, I wrapped her in it, and I literally ran back the 1.5 miles to the car, put her in a warm bathtub when I got home. I mean, so that was when I learned that she could swim, that she liked to swim. Lesson learned. And the other one, oh gosh, there's so many. The other one related to that was there was a pond in the front of my parents' neighborhood that attracts, birds of all kinds. And she got it in her brain one day that she wanted to chase some geese, and gone into that pond and swam around in circles chasing geese for a solid 45 minutes. And I just, for the first 15 minutes or so, I was yelling, come on, like, Isabel, get out of there, get out of there. And then I just like let it happen. It's like she's just going to wear herself out. It's not like she's swimming out to sea, but it was a sight to see. And there were a lot of geese, so it was pretty noisy. I'm sure the neighbors really appreciated us. Yeah, she just, so many water memories. Yeah, but she was fun.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, happy to.
Well, thank you so much for showing up and being so vulnerable and open and sharing Izzy with us. And we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Day After. You can find this podcast and more at our website at www.thedayafter.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate if you could take a moment to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts.